Hey everybody, welcome back. Cool video today. Hopefully maybe a kind of a little cool series. We are going to talk about test-driven development in Apex and exactly what that looks like. And we are going to do it by building a Fizzbuzz for enterprise application. So we're not going to play around today. This is sophisticated stuff. We got S objects and all kinds of things to deal with. But what I wanted to really talk about was TDD. Probably in the last year, I'm going to say I've really become more and more of a TDD proponent, evangelist. I feel like once I started to include that in my workflow, writing my tests first, it caused me to approach software development differently. And I'm saying basically, you end up having to think about your problem at the smallest level possible. Because when you write your test first, it's like, what's the littlest thing I can solve right now? Okay, I'm gonna write a test for that. And once that's green, and we'll follow that classic, that TDD pattern, right? Red, green, refactor. I'm gonna write a test, and it's gonna be red. It's gonna fail. Now I'm gonna write just enough production code, just enough to try to turn that test green. Now I'm gonna move on. I love in Ken Beck's great book, Test Driven Development. Which I highly recommend that everybody own, read, and do the examples. He has the great line, right? Start small or don't start at all. And I think that is really what TDD forces you to do. It forces you to start small, not write up a whole bunch of classes, all kinds of stuff, and then start to work through and make sure it actually works. And step two, what I want to talk about more is, and this is somewhat subjective, the difference between a unit test, an integration test, an end-to-end test. What I feel like typically in this industry as developers, when we write unit tests, what most of us write, and I did this for quite a while, we write integration tests, we write end-to-end tests, right? So what I mean by that is, I'm gonna write a test class, and I'm gonna have to set up, accounts and contacts and leads and opportunities, and I'm going to do stuff to them, and then I'm going to persist them to the database, and then I'm going to query the database, and it's going to hit all these triggers. That's in my humble opinion, that is an integration test. We still need to write them. It's still important to know that a validation rule isn't going to cause your whole application to fail. But unit tests are written just to prove that the logic of our code works. So unit tests should not be, I'm going to say, dependent on a validation rule. When a unit test breaks, it is not because of a validation rule, right? It is not because of bad data somewhere. It is because fundamentally there was a problem in as a developer, our mental model of the problem. So what we're going to do, we're going to hop in and we're going to code up Fizzbuzz. And so I'm going to open up Illuminated Cloud. A little bit of pre-work done for people that want to do this, because this is sophisticated stuff, right? So for people that don't know, Fizzbuzz is kind of a junior developer interview question. Came from an article talking about he used this to weed out candidates that really just couldn't code at all. But what Fizzbuzz, the essential goal was Fizzbuzz should take a list of integers. And if that number is evenly divisible by 3, it should return Fizz. If the number is evenly divisible by 5, it should return Buzz. And if the number is evenly divisible by 3 and 5, it should return Fizzbuzz, right? So I have a few classes that I've done here ahead of time. We may not even use them because I think this is going to be at least a 2-part video. But I do have a Fizzbuzz object, right? Fizzbuzz S object. And it's got a couple fields here. Results, which is where the Fizzbuzz will go. And the value for analysis, right? So we're not just going to do party tricks and pass data around. We are going to work with an S object. All right. I don't think we'll really use these today, but we've also have a trigger handler. And this is nothing more. I should say nothing more, but this is Kevin O'Hara's trigger handler. A lot of people are probably familiar with it. If you're not, Google it. Go on Kevin O'Hara's trigger handler on GitHub. To me, this is a fantastic lightweight trigger handler. Been around for a long time, stood the test of time. I use it all the time. We also have a Fizzbuzz trigger handler, right? Right now we just have a before insert, before update. They're stubbed out. There's nothing there. We've got I crack myself up every time I see this. We have a Fizzbuzz trigger. And for people that wonder, like, this is essentially what all that should ever be in a trigger. Yeah, handler.run. Some variation of that should be all the code that is ever, ever, ever in an Apex trigger. Nothing more than that. If you have more than 2 lines, I think there's something wrong with your trigger. Then anything else? In the pre-work, okay, I don't know if we're actually going to use this today. This is a very stripped down version from a fantastic article that James Simone wrote on his blog, Joys of Apex, talking about mocking DML. And as we get into this, pardon me, I have a sip of coffee. As we get into this, I think you'll see that probably one of the most important things to do. Okay, sorry, I am back. That coughing, that hit me. I had to step away and pour myself a drink so I didn't have a coughing fit on the screen. All right, so this is I'll include a link to his fantastic blog article later. And we're probably not going to use this today, but it is a way to mock our DML, which I think is probably one of the first and most important things that you can do to write good, fast unit tests. All right. So with that said, all right, let's start to get into this. I'm going to close out all of this. And so the first thing we do, right, when we do TDD, is we need a test class. I'm going to say Fizzbuzz _tests. And that is going to be a unit test class. And just we're going to say if it's divisible by 3, cannot spell today, return Fizz. All right. F2. That's going to bug me. All right. If by 5, return, whoa, keyboard ran away from me there, huh? Time to clean those keys out. Return buzz. And if 3 and 5, return Fizzbuzz. Okay. So if I was going to approach this problem, I think this is a great, but if I was going to approach this problem without doing TDD, the first thing I would probably start, right, I'd just start writing on my class. I'd be like, okay, I'm like, if it's this, do that, else this. That's actually conceptually a really hard thing to reason about. Conditionals are a hard thing to reason about, especially if we're going to test first. And like I said, to me, the beautiful thing about TDD is it forces me to think at the smallest level possible. So I'm going to say for me right now, this is just, right now I just need a class that will compile. And then I need a method that if something is divisible, evenly divisible by 3, it returns Fizz. So let's just call, our first test method is going to be, I'm going to call it is, not as Fizz. I'm going to say it should return Fizz. All right, that's a good name, I think. And I'm going to say given. And then I'm going to say Fizzbuzz. Fizzbuzz equals new Fizzbuzz. All right, now you see illuminated clouds, throw in the red underline, or because it's just let me know, hey, like this isn't even going to compile, and that's fine. That's what we expect. And then I'm going to say, you know what? I think I want a method that's just going to return a Boolean. Result equals fizzbuzz.isFizz. Okay, and then, so what I want, I'm going to give it a, I want this to return true, so we're going to give it a number of 3. And then I'm going to do system assert result true. All right. Add my when. Then. Okay. So first, let's just get something that compiles, right? I'm gonna create my class. Okay. My Fizzbuzz class is Fizz. And I need that method now. And Boolean is Fizz. So again, Illuminated Cloud is helping me out here with this. That's one of the things I really, really like about this is in my opinion, the king of Salesforce IDEs. And so let's get down to Boolean is Fizz. And right now that's hard coded in. And you know what? I'm going to say for right now, that's fine. Alt F12. I just want to make sure it all compiles and works. Source push. All right. Okay. So we went from something that wouldn't compile, and I actually already kind of I should have just run this because I should have just run it so it would fail, but it would have failed because it wouldn't compile. So now if I run this, it actually should pass because we hard-coded the result in. Okay, so it passed. But yes, it should, right? If we go back to our production code, it's hard-coded in. And one of the things to understand, this is, I agree, kind of a silly, small step. You don't always have to take, and I'm going to, again, use a lot of quotes from Kent Beck, because he wrote the book, on TDD. You don't always have to take such small steps, but the beauty with TDD is you can. And I must say that getting a quick green excuses a lot of sins, but only for a second. So getting that quick green that we know, hey, we've got code that compiles and we can get a test that passed, that excused all these sins of this hard-coded, this frankly useless method, but only for a second, right? So now we actually have to go back in and let's try to, in fact, and also I'm going to say I don't like integer I. We'll call it number to check. All right. If we're going to say and let's see what we want to do. So we just want to check, right? If number to check. So what we need is math.mod number to check number to check and 3. If that is equivalent to 0, we're going to say return true. Else return false. All right, now let's go back. Let's compile this. And some of you might be wondering, I'm going to say this because I truly am doing this for the first time here. Hey, but what if I wanted to write a string? I wanted to return Fizz. We may change it to that later, right? So one of the things I'm going to say when you are starting to code, and this is another area where I think TDD gives you tremendous freedom, is there's a fantastic chance that your first implementation is going to be wrong, right? And that you are going to need to go back, red, green, refactor, and change that. But now if hopefully we have a working test for a Boolean, it becomes much smaller to like if I want to start to refactor this app, maybe to return strings. But right now we're just going to stick with the Boolean. If we need to, like down the road, we decide that's a bad idea, we have working tests, right, to go back and work on. So let's go back and let's see if that passes. Perfect. All right. So what do we need next, right? We need a, it should return buzz, right? Let's test our next piece of logic in this sucker. At is test. All right. And we're going to say, I tell you what, I think I need to clean my keys. I've been eating over my keyboard too much. They're running away on me. Static void. It should return. You know what? Let's actually do a negative test. I'd feel better if I had a negative test there to make sure that really was working. It should not return. Actually, I'm going to change that because actually we have a test that says it should return Fizz, but it returns a Boolean. It should not return true. We'll call it for Fizz. I think that's an okay name. All right, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to, you know what, I'm just going to copy and paste all of this. And we're going to test the number 2. And false. All right, so, and we got to compile this again. Give it a second. All right, so now let's run our tests. Boom. Okay, so it is indeed working. So let's go on. We got that one done, right? Let's head on down and let's. Next thing we need to figure out how to do, I'm going to say, is divisible by 5. That seems like kind of a small problem, the logical next step. So at is test static void. It should return true buzz. I'm going to go and change this name just because it's kind of bugging me. Should return because it doesn't fit in with the. I feel like the convention of the other unit test names we're establishing now. All right. Given, let's just say Fizzbuzz, new Fizzbuzz. All right. When Boolean result equals Fizzbuzz is buzz. With the number 5, right? That's the next thing we want to check. Although we do our syntax correctly, is buzz number 5. All right, and we're going to say then what we expect is result true. And it should return true. And you know what? I didn't put my messages in there. And even though it's a YouTube video, I feel like it's poor practice not to do that. False. If anybody's curious, I'm using tab 9, which is like an AI code completion tool. I've been generally pretty happy with it. I think I discovered it through one of Kevin Porman's absolutely fantastic Salesforce developer videos. And all right, so Fizzbuzz. Okay, so right now, right, like I'm going to say this is a red test. It will not even compile. Right, so let's just go to, like if we just tried to push it, so we went red, green. Now we should be in the red again. We have code that won't compile because we don't even have a method. Push failed. All right, so let's go back and let's add that method in. Public boolean is buzz. You know what? I'll just go with that. Now I'll change that to a 5. We should put an else on there. Otherwise, we're going to just return false, right? Probably do these with ternaries, and we could refactor that later. All right, so now okay. Let's go back and let's run our tests. That test now should compile and pass. Fix a little typo there. Should return true buzz. All right, I like to run all my tests every time to make sure that that next step did not break anything I did previously. All right, so we know so far our Fizzbuzz app is working. All right, I'm going to do, again, just to validate my own mental math. We're going to do, all right, now to follow on with that, like I said, we are just going to write it. We're going to do a quick negative test. And I'm just going to copy and paste that sucker. Control V. It should return false. And number to check. I'm going to use my mouse. Let's see. Number to check is 6. And result should equal false, right? False. So should return false. All right. And now compile that. Let's run it. There we go. Green test. Awesome. So we scratched another one off the board. We know our app is working so far. And let's do, we need to do a Fizz Buzz now. So let's go back. And some of you might be watching this and say, oh, this seems like it takes a long time. Well, when I'm saying Salesforce development, not really, because you got to write those tests one way or another. And we do not write tests for code coverage, no matter what. I mean, that number has to be there. But I say code coverage is a byproduct of good tests. It is not the goal of our tests. The goal of our tests is to prove our code works. It should return true Fizzbuzz. All right. So by finding if anybody's familiar with like lean manufacturing, right? Lean principles, by uncovering our defects as early as we can in the process, it actually speeds things up a lot. Given, how about we make that a comment? Given Fizzbuzz equals new Fizzbuzz. All right. Then I'm going to say boolean fizzbuzz.is fizzbuzz 15. Then say result true, it should return true. And you know what? Just so all right. So once again, we've got code that will not compile, right? So that is, I'm going to say like that's a red test, right? So I know in other, maybe you would run, because it's Salesforce and this runs on the cloud, to me, this is a red test, even though I can't click the green arrow and, you know, well, I mean, I guess I can, right? It's just going to say that it can't find the test, right? It's a red test. All right. Test ignore doesn't even exist, does not compile. And we can't compile until we fix these problems, right? Because it's referencing a method that does not exist, right? So we got to go and fix that up. So we're going to go back to is Fizz, is Buzz. And we're going to say public boolean is Fizzbuzz. Number to check. I'm going to say if number to check 3. In fact, you know what? I don't think we even need to do that. I've never done that. How about if we just do if I think this will work. Is Fizz number to check and is Buzz number to check return true. Oh, return false. Oh, I think that should work. All right, so let's go back to our test. All right, let's compile everything. Let's see if we have a green test now. All right, compile. Why am I scrolling through my terminal right now? That won't do me any good. Back to our tests. It should return true. Let's run it. Oh my goodness, it passed. So now I think actually sometimes the negative tests are even more important. All right, so Control C, we're just going to copy that. Control V. This test should return false. All right. Number to check 12. False. All right. Let's see what happens. Okay, boom, let's clean up that spacing issue because it bugs me. Let's run our test. Test passed. All right, now here let's do the big enchilada here. Let's run all tests with coverage. All right, look at that. Oh my goodness, 100% code coverage. But we never wrote a test along the way with code coverage is the byproduct of good tests. It is not why we write tests. But we now have good tests that prove that our application thus far is working. Because this has already been about a 30-minute video, I'm going to wrap this one up here. And we will finish up the next part in part 2 of this. I think we'll do. where we actually, right, take an S object and, check and pass it into our Fizzbuzz class and check to see, right, and update that S object with a fizz or a buzz, as the case may be. And who knows, there might be a part 3. Maybe we'll do like this in JavaScript, right? We'll do TDD with Jest. I think that'd be cool. Let me know in the comments. I think it would. I'm trying to get better with Jest myself. So any excuse I get to practice, I'll take. Thanks, everybody. If this was useful to you, please let me know. If it wasn't, let me know too. Likes and subscribes, always appreciated. And tell your friends, right? So I can get rich and use this to use YouTube to pay my kids' college tuition. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.